Kemet.
Welcome to Decision Space, the only show to take place right here in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Brendan Hansen.
I'm Jake Friedman.
And this is the podcast about decisions in games.
And this week we are doing a special mission planning episode where Brendan and I are going to talk about some of the games that we're excited to play together in person next week at Geekway to the West convention. Brendan, how does that sound? How excited are you for this trip out to the Midwest?
It sounds fantastic. I'm very excited. Longtime listeners of the show will know that Jake and I have actually never met in person. After multiple years of doing this show together, multiple years before that of like closely sharing a hobby that we both enjoyed, and like we're in the same community. So I'm really excited not just to get together and play a ton of games with you, Jake, but also to like meet you in person, make sure we're both real people.
What if we don't like each other at all and then the show's over?
Have you been worried about that?
No. What if I've just been like catfishing you this whole time with like some really elaborate, like, I don't know, like deep fake technology on this video chat we do?
I forgot. Yeah, that could be possible. I forgot to warn you.
Have you considered that?
I hadn't considered you might be using deep fake technology. That throws a real wrench in the whole framework I was using. I thought, I don't know. I did have some concerns. I'm worried what you're going to think when you realize that I don't shower outside of the state I live in. Just as a hard and fast rule.
Well, that's honestly smart.
Right. You can't trust foreign waters.
That's right. No, anyway, obviously super thrilled to host you, and yeah, can't wait. So I think what we're going to sort of do is you come in on like Thursday night.
Yep.
So we'll probably do some like kind of gaming with just us that evening rather than try and like jet out to the convention center and back. And then we'll just be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, bright and early.
Full days.
At the convention center.
Live, eat, pray, play. Eat, play, love. That's better.
Live, laugh, game.
No, but in all seriousness, I'm so excited, Jake, and I'm really excited to get to play games with you in person. I think it's going to be really cool knowing so much about who you are, why you play games, your personality, to like see that come out and to have a whole nother physical aspect added to it. Like, what does Jake Friedman look like playing a Steffenfeld game in person? I don't know for sure, but I'm excited to find out. So a lot of this episode, I think, is going to be talking about what we're both hoping to get out of Geekway, like you said, and then also just discussing some games we want to play together, which I think will be fun and kind of lay the groundwork for the episode that will come next week following our Geekway trip, where we do our sort of classic post-Geekway mini reviews episode that have been huge hits in the past. So we'll be doing that this time as well to kind of process everything, talk about what we enjoyed, and hopefully, we'll be talking about a lot of the games that we are talking about here. And I think also some surprises because, you know, Jake and I were realists. We know that the best laid plans never always work out. So some of these games we probably won't get to the table, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And so just in brief, what Geekway is a board game convention that takes place here in the St. Louis region. I think it's technically in the St. Charles area, which is sort of
nice. Headed to St. Charles.
May 18th through the 21st. I've gone the past 2 or 3 years, I think, at this point, and it's always a total blast. I think the thing that sets Geekway apart from other conventions that I've been to is that it's just about playing games. It's basically just an open space with tons of open play. There's some sort of tournaments and events going on the side, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of board game geeks getting together, playing games, and you get to be sort of in the presence of a truly epic board game library that's got, you know, every great game more or less that exists. And then also they have like a really elaborate play and win section that has, I don't know, like 100 games or something that are all just hot games, new games that if you check them out and play them, then you get entered in a chance to win it at the end. So it's just a total blast. And also there's going to be a bunch of Decision Space listeners coming out too that we're going to get the chance to meet and game with. And if you're listening to this and thinking to yourself, hey, I'm going to Geekway, please reach out. We would love to meet you, game with you. The best way to connect with us is through the Discord. We've got a Geekway planning section there. But yeah, please don't be a stranger. You know, we're there to play games and hang out. And, you know, obviously it's a huge treat for us to get to hang out with listeners of our show.
Yeah. And The one thing the Geekway is really not is a chance to like go to booths and buy games or listen to talks, which I think is great because frankly, you could just listen to old episodes of Decision Space if you want to listen to cool board game talks. But from there, I think let's get into it, Jake. So the first section in our notes is like games we want to play together, maybe related to the con or independent of the con, but like things that we know we want to use this as an opportunity since we'll be in the same physical space to like try to play these games. So should we go through some of these?
Yeah, let's do it. And I think, specifically like when you get in on Thursday, maybe some of these could be ones that could hit the table.
Okay, am I going first?
Sure.
Okay, so Jake and I both really like TCG style games, right? We grew up playing Magic the Gathering. Both of us played a lot of that when we were, in our just before teen years. And then later on, the way we actually met was through another trading card game, not really, a trading card style game by Richard Garfield, Keyforge, which we both loved. So we have this long-term interest in this style of game. And I think that though Decision Space is a board game podcast, I think we're always looking for ways in which we can make and interact with these games and make interesting content based on it, which is a weird way of talking. What is it? I never feel like we're making content. I guess I should. I don't know why I just said that.
Yeah, don't say that.
I want to talk to. I want to have conversations with Jake. Thank you. Please do. Gosh, dang it. No, but I think I want to have more conversations with you about trading card games. Cards are like one of my favorite game components. So maybe we talked about this years ago. But maybe we'll try to get in some plays of the Pokemon trading card game.
So you bought a couple of starters, right, for the Pokemon trading card game?
I did. So I did some research on this. And basically there were like these level 1 starters that were 40 card decks. Or, which is not the full sort of deck experience, or you could buy the World Championship decks from last year in London, which are full 60 card decks and kind of like the game, the experience, when you're competitively playing. And those were cheaper. So sort of like, I'll buy those. So they have nice
that's
backs.
Exciting.
Yeah, they have these really shiny backs and came in this beautiful packaging.
They used to do that for Magic back in the day too.
I think it's a product very much based on those. Because the backs are different. There's no foil hollows in them or anything. But I was able to pick up 3 for fairly cheap, which will give us interesting matchups potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested in playing that. I mean, there's such a wide world of TCGs that almost just doesn't overlap with the board game hobby. Like there's a lot of crossover with Magic and a product like Keyforge that's like intentionally trying to like bridge this space. But you hardly ever hear anybody talking about Pokemon trading card game or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or there's like Dragon Ball Z. Basically every anime ever has its own TCG associated with it. So I played Pokemon when I was a kid. I'm really eager to just now as an adult revisiting this game, which I'm sure has changed a lot since I was playing it, which was probably like the very first, cards ever with the Charizard and everything. I would expect there's some amount of evolution in the past 20 years or whatever. But yeah, that'll be super exciting to check those out. I would love to do that.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll pair that with like playing Flesh and Blood or Solforge Fusion.
Yeah.
2 other games we're kind of interested in, which could then make for a compelling episode maybe to like revisit some of these.
I think that would be really exciting to do, like just a deep dive on TCGs in general. It's not focused just on Magic.
And also, what other show in the world would cover Flesh and Blood and Pokemon in the same episode? That's us.
Yeah.
That's
and
our
Solforge
space.
Fusion, I kind of tacked that onto our list here because I have a couple of starter sets of that. And I think that you would really dig it. Are you familiar with Solforge Fusion at all?
A little bit. You've discussed it on the show. I've read about it some. And I've also listened to a Shut Up and Sit Down episode talking about it. I know it's a Richard Garfield game. Kind of a follow-up unique deck game. But beyond that, don't know a ton.
Yeah. Richard Garfield's spiritual successor to Keyforge, like say no more. Mm-hmm.
We should play it. Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Awesome.
So we'll do some TCGs that Thursday night. Another game that I was thinking potentially would make sense for us to play would be some Knizia titles perhaps that evening. Maybe we could rope my wife in. She is a really big fan of Raw. I have the new 21st century or 20 whatever.
I think it's 25th.
25th century. That makes a lot of sense.
Gonna cheat him out of 100 years.
Yeah, edition 400 years. Anyway, I have that. Would you care to play
I would
Raw
I
with
would
me, Brendan?
love to play Raw. I think that would be phenomenal. That edition's gorgeous. So of the auction games, I've played a ton of the tiling games that he's made. Of the auction games, right, the sort of classic, well-known 3 ones held up in highest esteem: Modern Art, Raw, and Medici. I've only played Modern Art. So I would love to play Raw with you and Bridget. And I'm also interested in Medici, but I've heard Medici's just better at 5. Like, if you're going to play Medici, play it at 5.
I've played Raw at 3, and I think it works really great.
Great. Raw.
Yeah, I think it could probably... I think it goes up to 5, right? And it feels like 3 or 4 is probably the sweet spot. I mean, I put it as my, like, number 2 game on our top 10 list. So I've been really enjoying it. No, it wasn't that high. Maybe it was 3, right?
But it was very high.
It was up there.
I'm really excited to play Raw. And Raw's what, like a 30 to 45 minute game, Jake? It's pretty quick,
yeah,
right?
Very quick. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, you put another Knizia game on this list.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm ever going to play Babylonia in my life, it's going to be with you this next weekend, So we just absolutely have to find time to play this one together. That's probably like number 1 on my priority list of games to play, just because of the fact that this is your number 1 game of all time, has been for a while. We do this podcast together. I need to do my due diligence, and like, what better time than to actually have you teach it to me?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it works good with 3. Maybe we could do that Thursday night, or we should wait to bust it out with some decision spacers at the con. What are you thinking on that?
I love it at 2, 3, and 4. It plays totally the same and completely differently at every player count because of the way the map shifts. So I'd be very down. It's also quick. It's another between 30 and 60 minute game.
Do you think like playing it at 2, I'm going to get the Babylonia experience that you'd want me to have? Like, knowing what you know about me, what player count do you think I would most enjoy that?
I think you would most enjoy 4.
Okay.
I think once you'd played it at 4 or 3, you would like to play it at 2. And I think you would really like that experience, but I don't think it would be the best first impression. Does that make sense?
Usually, yeah, it does. Because usually playing a game at 2 is such a different feeling because everything becomes zero sum to such a greater extent. There's a lot of games I love at 2 and at higher player counts, but I can't think of any off the top of my head that feel like the same experience.
Yeah. Babylonia is amazing at every player count, I will say. But the decision space really opens up at 4 because the board opens up, so you just functionally have more options. But it's also really good at 3. I don't know. Should I bring it just so we have the option?
Well, I guess it depends on storage space. I know that we'll have it available to us at the convention.
Yeah.
So I would say only bring it if like
I can
you just have space. Don't go way out of your way.
Okay. The other game that's very highly rated on my list that I would love to play with you, and I think you're going to like more than you expect you're going to like, is Monolith Arena. Monolith Arena is this sort of combat game for 2 players, played on this shared hexagonal grid in which each player has their own unique faction, and their options on a given turn are variable based on this unique tile set that they have. So basically, you draw 3 tiles, you have to pick 1 to discard, and then you can play or keep the next 2 for the next turn. And then you always draw back up to 3. And you're putting tiles out, and then potentially you're playing these order cards that allow you to start a battle and resolve sort of this tension that's built up over the course of play. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think you're going to really like it. You had mentioned War Chest in the episode where I talked about this most recently on our top 10. And I know you don't like War Chest. So I'm going to say it's not like War Chest as much as I let on.
Yeah. I only played War Chest once, so it's not really fair to War Chest to say I don't like it. I just haven't read the rules. And I didn't like the experience of playing it without reading the rules. Sure. Which is probably true of most games in the world. Of games.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm not going to wear the War Chest hater hat just yet. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in checking that out, knowing it's one of your top 10 games.
Yeah, and it usually plays in 30 minutes. It's very quick, too.
So we got a handful of games that we could potentially play together on Thursday night. Maybe we'll also do some dinner. I'm thinking about good St. Louis restaurants to potentially get a reservation at, but it should be a really, really fun evening. And then it will be Friday morning. We'll be heading to the Geekway convention, picking up our badges, and hopefully trying out a bunch of new games. So in the next part of this episode, maybe we can talk through some games that we want to play there specifically that we haven't ever played
Great.
and why we're interested in playing those games.
That sounds awesome. I think you should take it away because I'm really interested in this first game on your list.
Okay, yeah. So the first one is in the play and win section, and it's called Bamboo by German P. Milan is the designer, who is also the designer of Bitoku, a game I haven't played, but a game that a lot of people really like, maybe a little bit polarizing. I've also heard some people kind of bounce off it. But Bamboo first came on my radar because one of my friends here in St. Louis, also a listener of the show, Jared, said that he was really intrigued to play it and was wondering if any of us were going to buy a copy. So that put on my radar. I looked it up and kind of fell in love with just the aesthetic. It's like a super cutesy pastel color game. Think like Takenoko in sort of the design ethos about sort of building up a home. But what the game actually is a action selection game with a lot of really sort of confounding mechanisms where in order to do the actions, you have to take bamboo sections from your personal player board, slide it up the bamboo stalks on the personal board. Like whatever you get from there goes back into your player board. That could be used for different actions later, but you can only use those actions if you deliver incense to the appropriate temple, right? So like it seems like a game that has a lot of mechanical artifice in order to do the action selection, which seems interesting to me. It seems like a pretty short and a pretty short game with like a little bit more complex mechanisms, and then the hook that made me really intrigued after watching the rules video. I was kind of like, okay, this seems like a little bit mechanical artificey. It seems like a game that maybe is like unnecessarily difficult to do things, but then it gets to final scoring and it has this mechanism that I just really love and am intrigued by, which is that over the course of the game, you're trying to get these comfort tiles to put into your home, and your home is like something like a 3x5 grid, or maybe it's like a 4x5 grid.
Just like my house.
Yeah, exactly. Just like in real life, of course. And so so each of the comfort tiles you get has like a comfort value between 1 and 3. So 1, 2, or 3. And then at the end of the game, everything needs to be perfectly in balance. So you have to add up all the comfort values for your tiles in the right and left 2 columns of your board. And for each, and then you subtract the difference, and whatever you get -2 points for whatever the difference is. So you have to like really be careful as you're completing objectives to make sure that you're like maintaining balance in your home, or else you'll get punished at the end of the game, which I thought sounds really cool. So anyway, that's Bamboo, why I'm excited to try it. And it's definitely a perk that it's in the play and win section.
Yeah. It's looking at photos of this game, Jake, the presentation is just gorgeous. Like all of the pieces are really neat and look like they'll be really fun to touch and engage with. So that's what I'm really interested in. Thanks for bringing that one up. Jake, there's a lot of games that I know that I won't have necessarily the opportunity to play in my day-to-day life as easily as if I was at a convention. There's something about being at a convention that makes games that play like 3 to 4 players that are slightly longer just easier to get that experience for me than it is in my sort of day-to-day life where putting together a game group, it's typically that I'm playing with newer gamers or that I'm playing with Maya and we're playing mostly 2-player games. So that's something that's on my mind a lot for this convention. But when I was writing these notes, Jake, I was like, we have to put some sort of frame. Maybe this will be our top 5 games that we're excited to play. And then I now in front of me have a list of like 9 games. So
I know.
I've totally...
Your list is a disaster.
It's such
I
a
was
mess.
looking at it.
I have slashes in here. It's just a nightmare. But I really would love to play something that is a shared space, sort of conflict-driven game. So 2 things that came to mind for that for me. I think one of these is going to appeal to Jake's sensibility and one isn't. But I'm really interested. I've never played Innis and I've never played Imperial 2030. I would love to play one, if not both of these games. Imperial 2030 is a Matt Gertz game all about not having control about gaining control of different countries, but not caring about how those countries exist within the world, just using them for your own means to elevate yourself in your own position. It's sort of this dark outlook on geopolitical politics and sort of I would say, the sort of other forces behind them. And
In
it
the
sounds
distant
interesting.
future.
In the distant future of coming up on 7 years from now. Yeah, I think, but so that's very much of interest to me. And then Innis is a totally different type of game that's much more, it's just a area conflict game where players are on the board. It's a drafting game. But one thing that sticks out about Innis is that it's a drafting game with a small set of cards that you're drafting, such that I think easier than a lot of drafting games, you could study the deck really quickly and have a sense for what's there. At least that's what I've heard of Innis. So I'm interested in playing one or both of these games, and I'd love to get sort of a troops on the map style area conflict thing under my belt.
Yeah. I am going to Imperial 2030 is going to be one of the games that I'll bring with me in hopes
you
of
have it.
getting a group of players for it. Yeah, I picked up a copy pretty recently just because I happened to see it sitting there in the ding and dent section of my local game store. So I just got it for a good price. I haven't played it. It's been one I'm been really eager to try for a long time. So that's why I had it. This would have been on my list if I didn't see it on your list, so I knew I'd get to talk about it.
Nice.
So really excited to try that one compared to Inish, which is a game that I've played before, did not like. Doesn't it's I have a really difficult time a lot of times with negotiation in games and troops on the map game and sort of like games where you're taking over each other's territories. And Inish seems to really lean into like all the things about those games that I don't like. So I would probably sit out of that one, but I have no doubt that you'll find plenty of willing players among the decision space crew that'll be at Geekway.
Could you just would you say this is the same exact thing about Kemet?
Kemet I liked way more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know, and both of them have been I played Kemet really early on in my gaming, and Innis I played probably like 5 years ago now, so also not a recent experience. But I think I think it really leans into like the negotiation aspect of things. I didn't really care for the drafting as much either, but it felt like my play of Inish was like everybody just like sort of saying like, oh, somebody needs to attack this person, like, and then but I'm going to do something that benefits me, and then you know what I mean, where it's like people just like constantly lobbying what other people should be doing on their turn.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just don't like that.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. No, that's helpful to know. I like deal making, so maybe I can find some people to make a deal with.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'll go on to my next game if that's all right with you.
Oh,
and this is another one, a game I did not know about at all until I looked through the Play and Win library list, and I came across a game by Freedom and Frieza Freedom and Frieza is it that I had never heard of before, and it's called Findorff, and it's a brand new game. I think Frieza is a designer that has done a lot of interesting stuff. I played Power Grid last summer at my buddy's wedding and had a pretty good time with it, but not a designer that I have a ton of familiarity with, but still one that I'm interested in exploring more of the catalog of. So that in of itself was a reason that made me want to dig a little bit deeper. And so I watched a review of this game by the Game Boy Geek on YouTube, and what Findorff is a economic engine building game with an action selection rondelle and a power grid style market that the Game Boy Geek described as an epic Eurogame experience that plays in about an hour. And all those things are really appealing to me. It made me really eager to give this a go. Yeah, exactly. It's like, say no more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like the epic Eurogame experience, right? Like Trajan and A Feast for Odin are some of my favorite games, but they're a little bit harder to get to the table.
Yeah,
and I don't think this game seemed fairly complicated. So I don't know that it would really take only an hour if we had 4 people who are all brand new to it sitting around the table. But even if we could get it learned and played in 2 hours or so, it seemed like the gameplay had a lot of really exciting elements to it. I guess sort of one more interesting thing I found about this game is that it seems like the main core engine building this game is you're buying these cards that cost variable amounts of money and resources, and then having those purchased enables you to get some production benefit during the last section of your rondel, which is like the bureaucracy phase. So maybe it's just giving you income, maybe it's giving you some resources, or it could give you a special action you could take during the bureaucracy phase. So that's where a lot of the engine building of the game took takes place, is buying these cards, and then they're all worth the exact same amount of points at the end of the game, 15, and that's apparently where the majority of the points comes from. So a lot of the strategy of this game is you want to you sort of want to buy the expensive ones. Again, from the review, I haven't played it, but it sounded like you kind of want to buy the more expensive ones early that give you the better payoffs so that you're getting to take advantage of it more. And at a certain point in the game, you need to be able to transition your engine into just buying a lot of these cards for cheaper because they're going to be worth points.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it sounds really intriguing to me. And so really interested to try it if I can find a group.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting, Jake. I will also describe the board as charmingly bland. And
Yeah, it looks kind of rough, I think.
I'm kind of into it. I think that it's trying to be kind of like I think it's going for a certain aesthetic. The art itself is not by Clemens Franz, it's by Lars Arne Klauski, but I would say it's in a Clemens Franz style, trying to evoke a different age,
It's
maybe.
very much Frieza style.
Yeah.
Like he likes the green boxes and he likes green tones. So like everything on this board is sort of done in like, it's like, what if instead of brown it was kind of like brown green?
Yeah. Like really watered down split pea soup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, very green hued beige.
Awesome. So
So
that's Findorff by Friedman Freeze. That one sounds really cool, Jake. My next one, I'm still really excited about this pick. I really want to play it, but you recently played this game, so it might not be one that you're interested in diving back on. But to me, this is like the preeminent. If I'm going to play this game, I want to play it at a convention because I want to play it at a high player count, and it's Sidereal Confluence, negotiation trading game in which everyone has their own sort of powers and can sort of convert resources within the game differently than everyone else, such that you want to be making deals with people because you all need different things to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I've heard that the players who play this game best are the ones who can kind of involve themselves in the most deals because you're creating efficiency just by kind of lubricating the wheels of how the negotiation is happening in the game. That's exciting to me. I like, there's a lot of people who I'm really excited to see who I spend a lot of time talking to in the decision space community who I've never met for the first time. So a particularly talky game seems enticing on that front too. And Sidereal just, it's kind of elevated to this like gold standard of negotiation games that I know would be hard to play in an ideal setting outside a convention. So it's one that I'm sort of like, I'd like to play it. There's also a beautiful new version that kind of has really lovely art. So if it was on a copy of that, it's a bonus.
yeah, I played this a couple weeks back at my Monday night game night. Shout out to the Laughing Table friends. And we played at 5 players, and frankly, it felt like not enough. I think
Not
this
enough
game is,
players.
yeah, exactly. Like, I think this game is best played at the top end of the player counts where you feel like you're more in like the New York City Stock Exchange and
Yeah.
people are just like, yelling like, can I get a brown cube? I need a brown cube, like brown cube for a white cube, as opposed to 5 players, which create a really kind of odd dynamic where it was really easy for 2 people to pair up, right, and just be
Mm.
exchanging, and then other 2
Someone gets
people,
left out.
so somebody's just sort of like sitting there, like, and yeah, you can try and butt in on deals, but for whatever reason, like the meta that established at our particular table was that that person was just getting sort of like stonewalled, like, I'll talk to you in 1 second. And so that happened to me, but also I'm sure it happened to everybody around the table at different points, which was just kind of, it just seemed like not the best dynamic. And I also, I just had a really frustrating play of it in general. Again, I'm usually not huge on negotiation, but there's like it is also like severely unique, not severely, but like extremely unique player powers. So everybody has different unique player powers that you really have to understand well. And I did not do my due diligence to like learn how mine worked prior to playing, even
Mm,
though I knew in a week advance exactly what faction I was going to be. So that's on me. But I basically what I was playing some like military faction that had these like special terrain cards that I could build over the course of the game. And I didn't realize that by building and upgrading these cards, which is what I was really focusing on, that I was getting a bunch of points out of the like whenever I built one or upgraded one, I was getting an allotment of points. So I eventually figured it out and like added a bunch of points to my pool. It was easy to figure out how many points I was kind of due on that. But for like 90% of the game, I just thought I was like in a super distant last place. So I was just like annoyed because of that. And also, there is a horrible, like, one of like the worst graphic design iconography choices ever that caused me to in the very first round of the game run one of my you have like all these cards that are like converters, like you can convert these cubes into these better cubes, and
hmm
I basically ran a converter in the first round at like a loss, which
mm,
just sets you up on a bad pace because I didn't understand the iconography on the card for like, so I basically paid 3 big black cubes instead of 3 small black cubes,
gotcha.
and that so then I was like just like butthurt about that the whole time too.
Do you want to play it again?
I think I would play it if like a
If
big
there were like
game was
7 or 8
happening
people,
with
yeah,
like decision space people. In that context, I would, but definitely not like one I'd be really ever eager to play outside of like the convention game
sure,
setting.
sure, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. Cool. So that's Sidereal Confluence. I'm still tepidly excited, even though the graphic design sounds like it's maybe still a bear.
I mean, I think like now that I know it, anybody would be able to say like, don't make this mistake, but you would like
Sure.
just need to hear it once in order to
Yeah,
avoid
yeah.
it.
That makes sense.
Okay, so my next game I'm interested to play is also a potentially big group game, and that is Challengers! Exclamation point by Johannes Krenner and Marcus Slawiczek, perhaps. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Have you heard of this game, Challengers, Brendan?
Have I heard of the auto battler tournament setup style board game? Yes, and I want to
Yeah.
play it.
I figured this might be right up your alley. So
Yeah,
essentially, what this game is like you start out with a base deck of cards, and then in each round of the game, there's 2 phases. The first phase is like you get to draw 10 cards, and then you'll add, I think, something like 2 of them into your deck. And then you'll play a game against one random person, like in as in like a Swiss tournament. Like you
and it's
pair into
basically
groups of
just
twos.
war, right? Like you're
Yeah, it's
just flipping
basically
cards
the
off the
game
top of your
War.
deck.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'd flip a card, and maybe it says 3, so I get the flag, and then my opponent flips cards up the top of their deck until they get a value that a sum that is equal to or greater than 3. So they get like a 1 and then a 2. Now they have the flag, and now I'm flipping cards, and basically whoever ends up with the flag wins the game. There are some effects, so there's more agency than just totally random during the game. So it might be like if you play this card, then you can look at your next 2 cards and discard one or something like that.
yeah,
So maybe some small amount of agency. And then there's also agency and of course how you build your deck. So I think there's some synergies you might be able to find. I don't think it's a super high skill ceiling game by any means, but it sounds like a ton of fun, especially if we could find 8 people and do a whole on tournament with it. So another one in the play and win section too, I might add. But yeah, as soon as I heard about this, I think I heard first of it on the Board Game Barrage podcast. It just spoke to me of something that I'm really eager to try, just as because it sounds like a lot of fun, and also I'm interested in that sort of game design space.
cool. Yeah, totally. Any game structured like a tournament, I'm interested in. So let's try to play Challengers. The next game on my list is a game I woke up. Sometimes, Jake, I have a almost 2-year-old at home, which means that sometimes I wake up very early in the morning, just like worried that he's not okay. It's just a nice little, background. He's always fine. Just sleeping well.
Just
My brain's just like, what is is your baby okay?
just a constant background fear.
Exactly. So that happened a couple of mornings ago at 4:45 a.m. and I decided the best way to approach using my time at 4:45 a.m. would be to learn the rules to Mosaic, a story of civilization, the 1 to 6 player civilization building game by Glenn Drover, who's also the designer of Railways of the World. Mosaic is supposed to play in around 2 hours, and it's all about sort of building civilizations across this board. And I would say it plays into some of the tropes of Age of Empires and Civilization, 2 classic computer game franchises, though Civilization arguably started as a board game by Francis Tresham, the guy who also invented 18xx games, so incredible respect. But anyway, Mosaic is basically about collecting technologies, kind of like Civilization, and linking those technologies into each other as you build across the board, different cities and towns to get resources, trying to build up your population while striving for control of these different areas, essentially around the Mediterranean, around that whole area. And you might do that by, just building in an area, one of these regions with cities and towns is going to give you more presence there to win these sort of area controls. And those will score at the end of the game. Or maybe you'll invest in military, which will help you win these area control checks and give you victory points, but won't give you as many victory points at the end of the game. You might also be working towards these different wonders that you'll get for accomplishing certain things by building certain groups of towns or having certain technologies that give you points. This game looks really cool. It seems like for a Civilization game that plays in around 2 hours that there's interesting decisions there. I was really intrigued by it. There's unique player powers. There's sort of starting factions that are not themed around real civilizations, which I think is kind of cool, but instead are things like you're the farmer and you're the farming civilization or something like that. So this one's on my list. It's also in the play and win area. Oh, you're also doing this like set collection game, Jake, where there's all the board starts seeded with tons of different tiles, different goods tiles and different money tiles. And where you build plays into what tiles you want to collect and add to your board. So you're trying to get as many different types of these tiles as possible, from what I can tell. And it looks cool. There's interesting stuff going on. It's one I'd be really interested in playing.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to give this one a shot. I've heard a lot of talk about this on the Game Brain podcast, and they're like, I think they skew heavier than us and are
Yeah.
big civilization type game people, and they've been pleasantly surprised by this game. I guess it's sort of my understanding from listening to their conversation about it was that it's also a civilization game that sort of falls into this like tag collecting game genre, a la Terraforming Mars or Ark Nova or Earth, that are big.
Yeah, you're checking
popular
if you
games
have a
now.
tag.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting to see how that sort of fits in a game that's not just like pure engine building.
Yeah.
Though those games aren't always super successful with me. So I guess like I'm interested to try it, but would be like a touch wary. Like I'm not 100% sold from the description that would be for me, but there's definitely enough there that I want to give it a shot.
Yeah, totally. And that's a fairly new release that came out in 2022. And again, that's Mosaic, A Story of Civilization.
Cool. All right. Well, my next one is I'm moved on from the play and win section, and this is just a game that I know that our buddy from the Discord, Joe, aka Carcassonne Hater, is going to be bringing to the con. We had joked about maybe we'll do this, like bringing name tags so people can write their decisions-based Discord username on it. So since we obviously don't all know what each other's faces look like, but we do know each other's usernames and online personas, and Joe's sort of like, well, I can't do mine or else I'll be like stoned by the entire convention. It's like, well, you made your bed, okay? But anyway, the game is Millennium Blades, which is kind of like a granddaddy version of Challengers, because Millennium Blades is designed by Brad Talton Jr. of Level 99 Games, and it is the board game that simulates a trading card game tournament.
You've never played this, right?
No.
Okay.
But I
So
do like level 99 games in general. I've become a really big fan of Bullet Heart and Bullet Star. Played that now 3 times, I think.
cool.
And then, of course, we're big BattleCon fans too.
Yep.
So I actually have yet to play a level 99 game that I haven't walked away from thinking, wow, the design here is really good.
You're also a big fan of cracking card game packs. You get to do that in this
who
game.
isn't?
Yeah, no, exactly.
We're like just engineered that way as
Yeah.
humans, I think.
So that's
It's
built
kind of
into
a problem.
Yeah, well, it's built into the simulation. There's also I don't know if Joe has this version, but there's a version of Millennium Blades where the money that you use is paper money that the game instructs you to roll up, like rolled dollar bills, and you put rubber bands around it. So you're just like throwing wads of cash around the table, and you can use that to buy packs or in trades. And then you're also loosely building towards these different strategies where you're looking for synergies in the cards you're opening and trying to create combos. And then the actual combat is fairly simple. The like actual play of the game.
Yeah. So it's really kind of a similar structure to Challengers, right? Where you have like 2 phases. One is like deck building and one is playing a game
but
versus
if I
each other.
remember right, the deck building is real time.
Yeah.
And then the play is fairly fast. Like the game it's a game about preparing to play TCGs more than it is a game about playing TCGs.
Yeah. But there is still like a phase where it's like now you do the tournament.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Millennium Blades is fun. I played it 10 years ago. So I'd play it again.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm definitely excited to give it a shot. Maybe a little wary again, just because big, complicated games make me a little wary, but I have faith in level 99, faith in Carcassonne Hater. We'll give it a shot.
So the next game, and that's Millennium Blades. The next game on my list, Jake, is one that I only know of and only discovered because of looking through the Play and Win section. And it jumped out at me. It is a trick-taking game by Tanner Simmons, published by Cosmos. A trick-taking game, I'm going to say it again, published by Cosmos. Can you think of another game that falls in that category? Like The Crew.
I was going to say, I'm not good with the publisher game.
The Crew Mission Deep Sea, both Cosmos games, both trick-taking games that made huge splashes. So Inside Job, not the same designer, but it is also a trick-taking game, but it's billed as a mostly cooperative trick-taking game because it's also a social deduction game because it's a trick-taking game that you're playing with a hidden trader amongst you. So it's a novel pitch. I don't know how well it would work. To me, that sounds like you would... Trick-taking games can be finicky. So if it ends up being too finicky of a trick-taking game, it might be at odds with that sort of setup. But I'd be really interested in trying it. It's a 2 to 5 player game that apparently plays pretty quickly, and it's a trick-taking game, so it's pretty light. So it seems like a neat one, maybe a good palate cleanser or that sort of thing.
It feels like we're in the era of trick-taking games, but this is a trick-taking game, but it's cooperative. This is a trick-taking game, but
it's worker placement
on the cards aren't revealed until you play them. So
exactly.
that makes sense. That now we have to move into the social deduction or whatever element of it too.
Totally.
But speaking of social deduction, the last game I had on my list, not that there will be playing many more games than just these, I am sure. But the last game I list as one that I'm really excited to play that I've never played is Blood on the Clocktower, designed by Stephen Medway. And I don't think I need to introduce Blood on the Clocktower much. It's essentially Werewolf, the Resistance, except for everybody has a hidden role with like super secret special powers. So instead of just, one person being the baddie that's choosing who gets killed, somebody's that, but also somebody's immortal, so when they try to get killed, they can't get killed, and somebody's drunk, so when they get to see somebody's secret secret card, whatever their role is, the person who's running the game tells them one thing, but it's actually another thing, and they don't know that they're the drunk, and so on and so forth. So it just creates like a really, really convoluted mess of people pointing fingers. I don't know right off the bat if I'm going to love this game. Like, I'm somebody who likes the Resistance pure. like
Yeah.
no powers. So I don't know how much I'm gonna feel like I'm able to sink my teeth into unpicking this web of deduction. It feels like it might just be like too much to try and keep in my head, too much rules overhead for the social deduction experience. But if I'm ever going to play this game, the convention with a bunch of decision space listeners is how I want to do it. And at this point, this game has had enough positive press and reviews that I'm starting to second guess my own instincts on it and say like, okay, maybe it really is as amazing as everyone says, and it'll work for me too. I'm starting to buy into the hype.
Whenever I hear people talk about experiences playing Blood on the Clocktower, I'm 100% sold. It sounds like something that I really want to experience. Whenever I learn about the game of Blood on the Clocktower, I start to the yellow light goes up of sort of like, maybe not, and then I haven't had the opportunity to play it ever. I almost I was at PAX Unplugged a few years ago, and I think actually I could have played a game, but maybe the yellow light was pretty high at that point in time. And since then, I've heard even more stories of people saying, no, it's really good. You should play this game. So I think I'm back to like green light, I'm in. But if I'm 3/4 of the way through wishing I played Resistance instead, I'm going to be sad.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to play it at Gamers Ranch.
Yeah.
With like, it was like 10 people of like the 16 were all playing it. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to play it with you guys. I like went and played longboard with Paul instead.
Nice. Like, oh, the Knizia game. For a second, I thought you were just like, we went outside and we were longboarding. And I was like,
yeah, we were just longboarding around.
Yeah.
It was rad. No,
that makes sense. Okay. My next game, Jake, I have played Blue Lagoon, played Tigris and Euphrates, played Through the Desert. I've played Babylonia. But there's 2 games in the sort of major tiling trilogy that I haven't played from Reiner Knizia. I haven't played Yellow Yangtze, but I have it as an app on my phone. So I can play that pretty easily if I wanted to experience that, and will at some point. But a game that is harder to get a hold of these days, I could drop the $100 on the secondary market to get it. But I think the environment I'd like to play Samurai in is at a convention with other people who also really enjoy Reiner Knizia games. So Samurai is a game, one of our dedicated listeners, Jay Red-Eye, has a copy, has offered to bring it. I think this is one that I'd just love to play at the con. You don't get an opportunity to sort of play games by a designer you love, new games all that often. So this is one that falls into that category. Though maybe when you love Knizia, that's less true than maybe any other designer in the world, since he's designed like 500 games or whatever. But
more than that.
Yeah,
it's like 700.
Just 500 plus. We'll just stop it there. No, but I think Samurai has an incredible reputation, and it seems like a sort of a game that I'd really enjoy. A little bit lighter, maybe, than some of the other tile laying games. I don't know for sure, but that's on my list. Can I name 2 others, Jake, just really quickly that I'm interested in?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm also My City Roll and Write. We both love My City. A roll and write version of My City just came out, which I'm intrigued by. I think that it's sort of funny because My City is kind of a flip and place game already.
Yeah, I can't believe, I'm so surprised they chose to do this with dice and not as a flip and write game.
I guess it's the dice have different symbols on them. So maybe it's just a neat component selling point of view, and it differentiates a little bit. I don't know. I've heard that also there's a few games that link together within it. So I'm intrigued. It seems like light fun. Knizia loves to like make more games based around games he has that are hits. And oftentimes those games end up being good. So I'm intrigued. I saw it in Play to Win. That's one where if I was walking by and it was just free, I'd probably just snag it just to see what it was like. And then the other game in the Play and Win that I'm intrigued by, Jake, is Orichalcum. This is a Bruno Cathala Johannes Guppy game that plays in 45 to 60 minutes. That's built as like short 4X. I don't know that much about it. It looks cool, and it's Bruno Cathala, and I really like Bruno Cathala games. So it's one that I would be interested in playing as well.
I have an Orichalcum experience I can share with you.
Okay.
Which is that I was doing a Hot Ones Hot Wing challenge with all of the sauces. Okay. You know Hot Ones from the YouTube show.
Yeah.
And with a bunch of friends, and Paul Solomon got there late and wasn't going to participate in it, but he was just hanging out. And he kept trying to talk to me about how good Orichalcum is the entire time, and I had like this spiciest food in my mouth, right? Just like my mouth is on fire, and Paul's telling me how good this game is, and I just kept having to be like, okay, start over, start over, like I couldn't understand at all what he was saying because my brain was just like not processing the information. So I still have no idea what this game is about at all, though I do know Paul is a big fan.
Great. And I imagine I might also get to meet Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul
Paul.
will be there for sure.
Teach us Orichalcum if you're listening.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure he's listening, but I'll shoot him a Facebook message or something just in case.
That might be a more effective means of communication. Try to target one person and just laying it out to the world on a podcast. So thanks for that, Jake. Yeah.
So anyway, closing thoughts here. I would say that this is probably our most like selfish podcast episode we've ever done.
Yeah.
But I'm here for it.
And I hope y'all enjoyed it. I'll also say, if anyone's wondering, Brendan, you bought these 3 Pokemon decks. Are you going to sleeve them? No. I'm just going to I'm going to bring them to Jake and we're going to just shuffle the crap out of the cards.
And we're going to burn them.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Oh, no. Okay.
Only the fire types.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, God. 16, 17, 18 games we've discussed. Brendan, how many of these do you think we'll play to report back on next week's episode?
I would be really impressed if we played more than 7 of these games.
Are you kidding me? I want to play all these games.
I do too, but you know how things happen? You get pulled over into a game of Trajan or into some other thing. Like, what do you think?
I was going to say like 15.
Wow. Okay.
Because I want to bring people our thoughts. You know, they had to listen to us talk about how we're excited to play them. We should do our due diligence.
We should.
But at the same time, I also just like going with the flow at conventions. You know, if somebody's like, "Hey, I want to teach this game," I'm usually just there for it.
No, totally. I think, I'm gonna stick with 7. But if after day 1 we're especially, focused on mission, I think my number could go up.
Okay, so I'm sticking at. I'll go 14 because I don't know why, but I don't think we're gonna play Mosaic.
God, that rules video was so long. That could be why. Interesting. I think Mosaic looks really cool.
Yeah, I'd be down to play it. I just think it gets left off.
You've already sabotaged it.
No, I'm in. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode of Decision Space. If you're going to the Geekway convention, please reach out. Let us know. If you enjoy our show and want to support it, we have a Patreon page. You can also just leave us a review. Type up a little review. Just say, hey, I like this show. I think it's good. And if you like board games, you should listen to it on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening to this, if they accept reviews. We also have a website, decisionspacepodcast.com, where we recently posted our top 50 games of all time, each individually. So you can check that out over there.
And coming up after the Geekway episode, we're going to have lots more traditional, more focused Decision Space episodes. If you made it to this point, this message probably isn't for you because you seem to really be enjoying this episode in which Jake and I talk about games we want to play, which is great. And thank you for listening. But if not, if you just kind of made it here because you were zoning out, know that we have episodes on Twa, Chicago Express, Spots, lots of cool games coming up in coverage soon.
Great.
And more What We Talk About episodes, topics, TV.
Absolutely. Maybe one on TCGs.
Yeah.
But anyway, here we are at the end of the episode. So we just like to thank, as always, Hembry for allowing us to use their hit song, Reach Out, for our intro and outro music. Until next week, hope y'all have a good one. Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.